Hey, Hanuman, how are you today?
I'm doing great. And you, my friend?
I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
Definitely. Yeah.
I've been following the Hanuman Healing Hour for as long as it's been out, I think, or close to when you
Yeah.
started publishing it. And
Oh,
it's one of my favorite shows. So I've been really
awesome.
looking forward to that. I'll of course link where you're at in the
Definitely.
descriptions wherever I put this, so other folks can check it out.
Definitely.
Before we jump into the interview, I was wondering, a little experiment I've been trying with some of the guests is to just, instead of preparing questions, is to just start with a
Mhm.
little silence and see what kind of mystery wants to present itself first. What kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
topic and then we
Yeah.
can,
Definitely.
yeah. So I'll just invite us to have some silence, and if anything pops into your mind that you think is a good direction, or if anything
Mhm.
pops into mine, we'll see who goes first.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Hanumandas, I have a question for you.
Yes.
On your journey, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about your journey and like where how our paths intersected throughout the
Mm.
chat. But
Yeah.
I'm curious if the topic of dreams or dreaming or what happens when we're sleeping, or just the
Mm.
concept of dreams in general, what
Mhm.
has that on your path, has that come up for you at all? Just for some context, I've had some really important
Somewhat. Yeah.
realizations in dreams. So I wonder what comes alive for you, whether it's your experience or things you've read about when it comes to the topic of dreaming.
For me, a lot of the things I generally even talk about are from my experience. So I have I wouldn't say a rule, but I would say I have a something in me that if I don't have a direct experience with it, then I try not to give it to other people, or, hey, this is going to help in
Mhm.
this way. As far as like dreaming, lucid dreaming, astral projection, things of that nature, I do have experience with it. My view, I guess you would say, on it is it is necessary at times, but along with all the other stuff, right? It's something that we can't grasp at, something we can't be attached to. I am the person that's astral projecting,
Right.
right? Or I am the person that's, lucid dreaming, whatever it might be. Because then we're still playing in that realm of ego. You know what I mean? Even in the astral levels, we're still playing in that realm of, you know, I am this, I am not this. The opposites, the polars, you know.
Mm.
So I do have experiences of astral projection and astral like lucid dreaming, things of that nature, amongst also understanding and I guess maybe being in a way connected with some higher astral dimensions. You
Okay.
know what I mean? So like there are times where I'll just hear something Ramdas said, and I may have heard it in a lecture, or I might have heard it from Be Here Now, from reading it, or this or that, or whatever it is. But it's instead of that conscious ego saying stuff to me, right? Ramdas pops in and says something,
Mm.
and it's for me, if that's all it is, right? Ramdas talks about like not being sat or stuck in one spot, right? Allowing whatever's going to happen in that moment, right? And if that's astral projection for me, then that's astral projection for me. and it's fun. I won't lie,
Yeah.
but to be able to, sit up there and talk to the Buddha or talk to Hanuman or Ram or, Sita or something like that, or have Kali like come up and try to, make love to you or something. Those are all real fun experiences, but, they're
Yeah.
all at another level. There's still some part of an ego,
Okay. So just, I think there's a lot there. So I just want to kind of summarize, and maybe there'll be an interesting tangent we can go off that, or a follow-up. We might have a follow-up. But first of all, I was just reflecting on the fact that of the direct experience, I think that
Mhm.
that's a really interesting thing. Like that might be as some of us that are approaching meditation early in the journeys, it might be a bit, so it's almost a very liberating invitation, like try this out for yourself, try out
Yeah,
this
yeah,
practice. So I just
yeah,
want to kind of pin that and highlight that early
yeah.
perspective you brought up. But then
Mm,
you brought up, I think, something that's pretty interesting about this idea of grasping or clinging, and even something. So I've
mm,
experienced dreams as liberating,
mhm.
helping me get insight into suffering I've had. But then, and I think that's good. That feels good.
Yeah.
And but then there's this other thing about maybe almost, I don't know if it's too strong of a word, but almost becoming addicted to the experience, like the
Mhm,
experience of lucid dreaming. And you brought up the concept of like grasping or clinging, uh,
mhm,
and the ego. Maybe we could
mhm.
just follow up with that, because one
Yeah.
question I did want to ask you about common obstacles on the meditation path. Would you agree that this kind of grasping or clinging to a certain practice can be an obstacle, or what do you think about
Oh
that?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, not only have I heard that right from like Ramdas, uh, Ramana Maharshi was very big on, you know, just being the I of the I am, right? Everything else is not that consciousness. It's just a part of the game or the Leela, like Ramdas says, right? And by kind of just understanding that that's there, right? That in itself can be liberating,
Mm,
right? So if you're sitting down meditating and you're trying to fight the thoughts that are coming through, right? You're like, I don't want to have the thoughts, right? You're still at a level clinging to something. You're still grabbing as the person that doesn't want to have the thoughts. You see what I'm saying? So it's going past even letting go of it. Like the Beatles talked about, let go, right? But
yeah, yeah.
even going further than that of not being the person that's letting go. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like one of my personal struggles at the moment is I'm trying to quit tobacco, right?
mm,
So, I know it's bad for me. I know I shouldn't, blah, 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 blah. Health wise, I know I'd be so much better off, right? My meditation practices, I do a lot of pranayama, but it's still at the same time, what would it be like if I didn't, And I keep those thoughts in my head as opposed to the person that is quitting something or having to stop something. And yes, it may be a gradual process, but for me, it's part of a traumatic or generational trauma healing process,
wow.
right? My parents smoked, my grandparents smoked, like it's always been around me. It's just an accept. So
Mm,
for me to break out of that cycle, right, I have to heal from it. If I just stop, my patterning shows that I will go back,
mhm,
right? So this time that I'm doing, and I'm taking the time, I'm decreasing, I'm getting off of certain types of nicotine and supplementing with a lower type of nicotine. See what I'm saying? So it's not that I grasp to the person that's trying to quit, but I'm seeing that there is a point where my body will be done, and that's when it will quit, right?
mm,
I am not the quitter.
mm. Thank you for that. That is, just for some context, we haven't really got a chance to dialogue too much about this, but the one
Mm,
of the intention of this podcast is I identify as being a person in long term recovery from addiction, and we have groups of people in my community, and we get together and we're in recovery and we meditate. And
That's
it's really,
awesome.
yeah, it's really cool to hear you talk about,
Yeah.
in your case, it's cigarettes. There's
Yeah.
alcohol, there's other drugs, there's
And
smoke.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I do have my experiences with all those. I was in a 12-step program for about 5 years. You know what I mean? I haven't gone back to those drugs, you know. There have been times where, cannabis is necessary for me and
Mhm.
things of that, but whatever, and I don't feel so trapped as a drug addict
Yeah.
anymore. I feel as if there is a process of moving on from that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's one reason it's so cool that we're chatting right now and that this has come up organically,
Mm,
because it's something that, of course, we're hoping that these discussions can benefit our little group, but that they're also applicable to we're like a microcosm of others out there in the world
mm.
that might need to heal,
Oh, definitely.
work on healing. And I think that is something we're really bumping against, Hanuman Das, is
Mm,
the value, and both the perceived value or the egoic value, or whatever you want to call it, of having a label of I am this attached to an
mm,
identity versus
mm.
dropping the identities. And there's a lot of, I wouldn't say conflict around it, but there's a lot of like discussion and like
Oh, yeah.
and it feels like really alive to me, this, and it feels really good to me to drop a lot of these labels. um and
Mm,
and I think a lot of us, as we're practicing meditation, we're more so experiencing what craving is like, and
right. Yeah.
less so identifying as an addict or someone dealing with
Mm,
substance use disorder. And I just want to just highlight one
mm.
more thing from what you said. Is it was really very moving to me, the and inspirational, the self-compassion. First of all, just seeing clearly what
Mm.
your situation is with smoking, and
Mm.
that clear sight, it just seemed to naturally invoke compassion and a
Yeah.
heart of self-compassion, which I think a lot of
Yeah.
us are really wanting, and it's hard. It's hard.
It
So
is. Trust me, it's very hard for me too. Like
yeah,
it's been a, a decent long process, you know. I've been meditating since I was like 12 years old, and there was a very large part of my life where, um, for the lack of better description, I was 3D, like 3D. You know what I mean? And so, I came with a lot of baggage, but there was a moment of grace, and I think that, um, I'm extremely blessed to have that moment of grace. Like, there are a lot of people that I meet that are on this path because they know it's good, but there's moments where they haven't experienced that grace or that love, or, like Neem Karoli exhibited, that just complete un you know unjudgmental, not trying to put a label on love. He just looked at you and it was love, and we talked about the astral levels, and I've gotten to sit with him, and I've gotten to, like, that's in a way how I got my name, and for me, I am extremely grateful. Like, I feel the process of gratitude and being able to find small things that you're grateful for, right, can very much give you this sense of, confidence. You know what I mean? Like, I stopped using. There are a lot of people that don't get that opportunity.
right.
You know, I stopped this. I've gotten a point where I'm past a majority of anger issues. And these are all grace moments from Neem Karoli. And for me, it's very blessing, and that's why I like to show people that everything that I'm experiencing and all this happiness and being able to, have these moments of clairvoyance and just understanding and blah 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 is all completely doable. It's just how, it's said, you have to want it like a dying man wants water. or a thirsty man wants water, right? And you want to have God with you, and that for me is a constant God. That's constantly the loving compassion, that I've received, that I like to pass on.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely felt that as you were talking about your experience earlier. And thank you for sharing that with the world. I'm wondering, one of the things um, that I want to ask, actually, and I think it's pretty tightly woven into what you were talking about. With you referenced Neem, Karoli, Baba, you've referenced Hanuman, and you've referenced Ramdas, of course. And just want to invite. Of course, we're having a dialogue right now, but I'm also just on a meta level, inviting like the audience, people listening into our circle across time. They'll be watching this, who knows when. One of my main teachers is Krishna Das, and I do a lot of chanting with Krishna Das, and he does this beautiful prayer about the people feeling grateful to the teachers that came before, who left footprints in the sand for us. And that's something I want to do on this podcast and since you've already referenced them, I'm wondering if you could talk about, like, you've already talked about Neem, Karoli, Baba, and Hanuman, of course, but the teachers who have touched you in the past or given you something, could you tell us about them? Whether it's ones you've already referenced or something else that comes to mind?
Yeah. First, I have to honor Thich Nhat Hanh. He recently passed, and to be honest, he was my first teacher. I've always had this thing ever since I read a book when I was very young. I'm going to say like 9. It was the story of the Buddha, of Siddhartha Gautama, right? And that was the name of it. It was translated in English by I want to say a Chinese man. I can't remember his name to the top of my head, but it was very specific about the story of how the Buddha went from childhood to enlightenment, right? And somewhat past it had the Heart Sutra in it. And, there were some things in there, and I got a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it was called Loving Compassion. And it was very much about allowing yourself to see the beauty in everything, right? Allowing yourself to, one of his big references was always the flower, right? Seeing everything in the flower, right? The gardener, the person that watered it, the ground, all of it, right? And from there, I did a lot of I guess self-study. I would look up teachers and things like that, like Muji, from over in Portugal, and read a lot about Ramana Maharshi and Yogananda, and all these great wise yogis, and I was always raised very Christian. So it was almost like this taboo thing where I had to kind of hide it, and it wasn't bad, but at the same time, I knew somewhere in me that what the Christians were saying and what the Hindus and what the yogis were saying was very similar, and I finally got a chance to read, the Quran, the Torah, the this is and that's and that. And a lot of the stories are very similar, and it wasn't until I started practicing and studying yoga that I ended up looking up Ram Dass. And from there, it was a lot of like YouTube videos and things like that. And then I found out, oh my God, he wrote a book. What? So I got a copy of Be Here Now, and I studied that thing like a Bible. I'm telling you, there was a point in my life, my partner would ask me, something, and it would be blah, 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 blah. But I was still very robotic about it. Like I was still I am somebody that's practicing union with God, and I hadn't yet worked on some of my inside stuff. So from that point, it was almost like a lot of the stuff Ram Dass talked about started to go on the inside, and he was there, and then he passed. And there Krishna Das even talks about when Neem Karoli passed and how hard it was. And for me, it even though I hadn't really studied Ram Dass a long time, that hit hard. And something in me, when I heard about him pass, I felt something in me pass. And at that point, I started meditating even deeper. And the way I got my name was I was on a beach in St. Petersburg, where I live in Florida. And, I was meditating, I had a shawl over my head, and really what I can remember now is going into a form of astral, and Neem Karoli, Ram Dass, and variations of the Buddha. I'm not sure if you understand, but more the Ma avatar, Babaji type Buddha, were present. And there was this whisper that just continuously said, Hanuman Das, Hanuman Das, Hanuman Das. And I'm not going to lie, for a while, I went to my partner and I thought I was going crazy. Okay. Because it was very much there, and I was like, I have a feeling I'm supposed to call myself this to the group of friends, the satsang that I had in that area, and I got their ideas and they were comfortable with it, and it felt right when they started doing it, and so I allowed that to continue. And ever since then, for me personally, Ram Dass is my guru on a complete astral level. And it could be very fun and pretend, or it could be, he's sitting there watching me smoke that cigarette going, it's like, yeah, all right. So it's like a continuous now. I see him in all of them. I see that from the very beginning of what happened to me, there was a Ram Dass there. When we start to understand that time is very fluid, it's very conceivable that I had already met him previously and after and now, and my journey was happening way before I even realized it, and that for me, that's what I feel on the inside. So that's my truth,
Sure.
And that's for a lot of people where they need to get is finding their truth, building up that confidence in the I am.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that experience. Your experience with, first of all, the teachers that touched you. Gave us some great teachers we could look into, from Thich Nhat Hanh to Ramana Maharshi, and then later, especially after the kind of mystical, or what I'm seeing as a kind of mystical experience where you received your name, especially with Ram Dass. And yeah, like the kind of, it seems to me to be very organic satsang around Neem Karoli Baba and Ram Dass, and it's a really beautiful community.
Very feels like it.
Yeah, and yeah, it's great to talk to you about your connection to that. I'm wondering because I was thinking we could circle back, since you did talk about that kind of that astral experience with Neem Karoli Baba, sometimes Maharaji for folks who are looking it up. And you talked about this feeling of grace, or this experience of grace, I should say, that is really hard to describe with words. I've definitely experienced, I think something similar in the kirtan chanting I've done. And I'm wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about Neem Karoli Baba and Hanuman, and how this grace, what your experience of this is. And I think a lot of people report similar things. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
So it's very much on an energy level. On a, if you understand the way different dimensions can work, right? We have this physical plane, right, where Neem Karoli looks like Neem Karoli, right? Like Ramdas said, a fat old man in a blanket,
Mhm.
you know. On the energy levels, it's very different. You feel the being, right? So all the teachings, all the things, all the stories, all of that gives you this being identity almost, and you can feel that that is who that is. It's been a bunch of different people, and you can feel that also, but I feel like someone like Neem Karoli or Ram Dass has the capability of maybe more exhibiting, hey, I'm Ram Dass, you know what I mean? Or hey, I'm Neem Karoli Baba, because we're still identifying with that being as Neem Karoli Baba. But at the same time, you almost have this kind of unspoken understanding that that's what it is. It's a very internal, confirmed type, like like if you work with your intuition enough, right? You can start to feel when those type of things are around, right? You get that little gut feeling, and it's like, ooh, that might be a negative energy, or ooh, I feel all bubbly and light. What's this, light energy? You start to feel the difference, So when I was with Neem Karoli, at least the first few times, it was very, I saw the man in the blanket, quite a few times. It was a vision of when they were in the ashram and he was on his little tucket, right? And he would be throwing like mangoes at people or little guavas or whatever it is, you know what I mean? I would get pulled there, and it would be almost as if I was there, right? But I didn't notice other people, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I could say I astral projected back to 1970 and I was there with everybody. You know what I mean? That would be nice. But for me, it was an experience of, this is who I am. I am introducing myself to you. Right. And I very much understand what Ram Dass said when Neem Karoli told him about his mother, right? And it just broke. He was like, huh, how can you know that? I very much felt that energy of whatever it is, it's okay. You love me, right? Yes, then it's okay. And that for me was the what I call grace moment. You know what I mean? Of, you're doing what you're doing, and it just, you understand that it's eventually going to change, right? So I'm going to allow you to do it how you do it. But if you're in the moment, I'm going to make it change. And I very much have been able to see him in almost every person that I come into contact with, especially the difficult ones where he's rascally and likes to, give you challenges, and most people would see it as just this really angry person that doesn't want to back their car up because, you asked him to. Well, no, that was my guru in drag and came to challenge me, So I can see on those levels too. And it's a constant reminder of grace. Like, I'm still here, still here. So, and it's the same with Ram Dass. Every once in a while he'll pop in too. And it'll be a very similar energy, you know what I mean, to Neem Karoli.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, it was great to hear you describe this kind of moments of grace, and definitely talking about like everyday life, working with this energy, and then definitely I think we'll have to circle. I'm wondering what direction to take this in. Well, you've talked a few times about like the different levels, the dimensions, and I kind of started this conversation with the astral. And for folks, if you want to dive deep into this, Ram Dass talks about this a lot, like in almost every lecture. He's really clear on this. But just to give like a brief gloss of it, as Hanuman was talking about, you've got like the physical, the body, and then you might have like, right now I'm playing the role as a podcast host, and Hanuman is a podcast interviewer, so that's like another level. It's like our social, and I have a job, and I have I'm a boyfriend and a son. All these things, they're very important to many of us. And then there's like the archetypal level or the astral level, which I think you're kind of inviting us into to try to, and you're talking about, it's very slippery. It's almost, and definitely trusting the intuition. It's something I'm really working on. I don't trust myself a lot. I'm trying to trust myself more. And I think this is one that the grace of Maharaji of Neem Karoli Baba. This is a great doorway in. It's a different type of practice. But I mean, and we talked about direct experience, like inviting people to experience it. But there, you talked about the rascality of Neem Karoli Baba. It's very palpable. You will notice like this is something real. Like this is something that feels distinctive and so like, just to share a quick experience about this rascality. I do a lot of work in addiction. I'm working in addiction myself. There are some heavy ass moments that come up, and these like this feeling of like people getting real upset, like you're saying, and it's scary. And then I'll just feel like the giggle inside me, and I'll be like, "What is this?" And then I'll be like, "It's Maharaji." And it's like, it's so distinctive. It's not coming from me, but it is me at the same time. And it's just completely inappropriate. It's seemingly inappropriate. Like, this person is God. Like, why are you so scared of them? And it's just, it definitely, and I think that is one of the core teachings of Maharaji, is these direct experiences that kind of crack you open, whether it's a miracle, whether it's, it's a direct experience of rascality in inappropriate moments or seemingly inappropriate moments. So I just wanted to kind of, that was really helpful to hear you frame that like that, because I feel like I've had similar experiences. And this kind of, to bring us into like the social, the second dimension, or what, I don't know if it's quite the second dimension, but the the psychological conceptual level, just for my own sake, because that's where I get stuck at a lot, is, this like reminds me of like bhakti, or there's like a surrender aspect. It's like, I'm just be here now, it's an easy way. And
I also have a deep connection to Bhagavan Das, and he has a talk about getting into it, right? So taking what Ram Dass teaches about being in the moment, right, and then applying the understanding of getting into the game of it, right? So the job that we work, right, is part of this set up thing to keep us trying to, move in a direction, right? But we're beings that are just here, we don't exist on this level, but at the same time we do, just like we don't exist on the astral level, but at the same time we do. For me, when I'm going to work, right, I at a level identify with the guy that's going to work, right? So I will go in and I will bust my ass. I am probably what I would say too hardworking, right? Maybe they, see me as somebody they might be able to use a little bit of an advantage of. And then where that comes is, do I stand up for myself, being a being that's not being affected by it? Or do I play into the game, right, and do what is better for this being, right? So if I'm overworked and underpaid, do I fight for better pay and better conditions, right? That would suit my beingness, since I have to participate in that level at the moment, right? That's what the now of it is it doesn't matter what the future is going to be or what the past was. At the moment, I'm a dude working a job, right? So I have to fully be the guy working the job and act in the best interest of the people that work the job. So if it's for everyone's better interest to all get paid 15 an hour because that's a living wage, then I may need to be a driving force in something that makes that happen. Right. So I play with the game, I play with the Leela, and I start to become part of it. And Bhagavan Das talks about using that as a vehicle to enact that change, that grace, or those moments of being a rascal, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to participate in it whether you want to or not, right? Do you choose to do it lightly, or do you choose to do it suffering? You know, I choose to just, if it works out, it works out. I get 15 an hour. If it doesn't, then I move on and I find something what I need to do. That's what it is. And for me to play with anything else, right? Oh, I'm never going to be worth 15 an hour because my dad wasn't worth 15 an hour. Or I have to make 25 an hour because, it doesn't matter. In this moment, I'm a dude working a job and I play with that part of it. And for me, that is a lot of what my practice is doing those day-to-day things, but seeing that each one of them is a new opportunity for Maharaji to come in and go, look at this one, look at that one, and that's where the rascaliness comes in for me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hearing about how you've kind of transformed your experience with work, and what could potentially be an identification with someone who's underpaid and is a workaholic or whatever. You could easily build an identity on that, but it seems like you've transformed that into like a practice, a devotional practice. And it's interesting to hear you talk about like your work with kind of fighting for or trying to advocate for a living wage. It's interesting because I'm thinking, and how I was hearing you frame it, you're seeing clearly that the experience of not getting paid enough, like you're feeling tired and not compensated well for it, but there's not that like additional suffering of
right.
I'm not worth 15, like adding narratives.
Right.
And I think that actually, speaking of Thich Nhat Hanh, could increase your capacity to be a really effective agent for social change, by just seeing clearly.
And that's honestly, that's where it feels is, I don't know how many people are aware, but we are all, right? And when I say we, I mean the people that are in the community of knowledge and the people that are not. We are all going through a period of massive change, right? Whether you want to admit it or not, it's clear to see we're all going through a period of massive change. So whatever that change is going to be, right? The only way I can make it of something of light, something that is good for everyone, right, is to work on myself. Ramdas talks about, I can do nothing for you except work on myself. You can do nothing for me except work on yourself. And by practicing this and by working on myself in this way, hopefully other people will see that, and that's how they will work on themselves. And by doing that, we won't necessarily work towards change, right? Change will just happen. You see what I'm saying? It'll just be a process of, oh, all of us don't want to work for $12 an hour anymore. All of us don't want to, work to where we can't afford a living place. What do we do about that? That's how we get into the we of it. When we start understanding that the only way we can change things is if all of us become the we, right? What is best for all of us, not just the group or this person or that person, but the we, right? And by doing it on an individual level, you don't allow the boss that says, oh no, this guy's only worth $11 an hour and I'm going to work him 80 hours a week until he's dead. Well, by the time you become the boss, you won't be that guy. Now you are in a position to change. You see what I'm saying? So you fully play the game all the way up to the CEO, and then give all your employees $1 billion.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like that's how we change it, is we have to get so in it, right? That we transform it, we transmute it. We change the negative, we don't care about human life, people, whatever, to we care. You know, and whether I do this socially and it changes because of a job, or I'd love to write a book. I'm kind of trying to work on a book now, and whether it changes that, and it is what it is for me personally. I have no desired outcome. You know what I mean? For me personally, I know when my body goes back in the ground, this isn't going to matter. Like, I'm sorry to everybody, but this is not going to matter, but while I'm here, what am I going to do with the time that I'm here? Right? This tiny little minute incarnation, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's both. It's an interest. Many of these discussions get very paradoxical, but it's that paradoxical thing of like nothing, that you have the capacity to make great changes, and it doesn't really matter, and it's just a part of a whole, a collective, anyways, and we all play such minuscule roles, but those moments of love and inspiration, like you were sharing, and hope. It's like a collective hope. It's like the same hope that we can kind of commune in, and spend time there. And we don't know how it's rippling out or what exactly it'll do. I'm curious about something. I think it's time for a trick question, if you're okay with that.
Okay, shoot.
We have like a traditional question on the show, and it's this. I think you might be a good person to ask them that based on people you've referenced earlier. So I'm glad that it's being posed to you now. But the question is, who am I?
Nobody. But you are also everybody. And you are. Go ahead.
I feel like someone, but I'm intrigued by your answer. Yeah.
We all feel like someone. I mean, from the time we were born, we were trained to be somebody, something, you're a boy, you're a girl, you're this. There's a whole bunch of them, you know what I mean? But we're trained. And as we grow through trauma, through, blessings, through whatever, we form this personality, and we identify very strongly with this personality. And, I mentioned that there was a period of time in my life where I was very 3D. That was that personality. That was that kid that was hurt because his mother passed when he was young. He was the kid that, this and that happened to. And then he was the husband that the wife, and this, and there was a story. We all have a story. We all come with my problems, and we hold on to them extremely tightly. Like, that is us. I'll talk to people and they'll go, well, this person did this to me years ago and blah, blah, blah. You're years ago. You're existing years ago while your body is right here. And for me, I really never found that until I practiced the being here now type meditation, right? But you start to realize that that's not you, but it is you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why I say you are nobody and somebody, because you are all that. We have to go through our lives daily. I'm not a Buddha, and I don't know a Buddha that I've seen talking, but there's a Buddha in everybody.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I do. Thank you for that. You may just for the folks. The reason I'm posing this question is if it's very the who am I question. You'd reference Ramana Maharshi, and he would ask people like at many times just out of nowhere, like who to just ask. People would ask all kinds of questions, and it would just ask where the I is. And I think it's very interesting practice, sometimes called self-inquiry
Mm-hmm.
practices. And I'm wondering what you think of this experiment I've been doing. I've been differentiating in my own experience the I and the me. Now I've completely made this distinction up, but to me, any me is something with a story, like you're talking about. Like I'm feeling anxious, so even that right there is a story. The I is actually experiencing a tightness, a racing heart. There's these sensations, but there's this story going on, which I call the me, which is about, I was, people don't like me because I was bullied in school and blah, 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 blah. And of course I do have, that sucked. I mean, that was a memory I
Yeah.
had.
Yeah. And it's all valid.
Yeah, it's incredibly valid, but ultimately that isn't happening right now. What's happening right now is something that is visceral, which is a beating heart and tight stomach, but ultimately it's pretty manageable. We're just talking right now. It feels very safe, but it's easy to get into this me story. And I've been playing around with this I, which is just like, what's happening? Like what is in consciousness, or what am I aware of?
Yeah.
And it seems pretty interesting, but it seems to me to be related to, there's all these things that come up for me, which are, I think, like either beliefs or stories that are probably useful in some sense, but they're ultimately not actually tangible in any way. That's kind of a mind-blowing thing for me. I think it's related to some of the things you're talking about, but I'm curious. It seems that it might be intersecting, but I'm curious, what I'm missing or anything like that. Do you relate to what I'm talking about?
I do. So as far as the way Ramana Maharshi taught, his technique, right, that he taught is very well for understanding that you are not the person having the experience, but that you are the experience of the person having the experience.
Wow.
A lot of times use the movie metaphor, right?
Yeah.
So you're not the movie, right? When you identify with your body, you think you're the movie, right? And then you start practicing the witness, right? Which would be the person sitting there watching the movie, right? But where it goes to is you aren't even the film that's in the projector. You're just watching this theater that's sitting on a rock, right? You're the omnipresence of existence, right? It's in all things. It's present in everything. Whether it doesn't matter whether it's at a level of physical thing, right? Or if it's a person, right? Or a small animal, it's all the same aware conscious, right? A flower knows it's a flower, but it doesn't ever have a desire to be a tree, right? It just understands I'm flower, I'm flowering, right? Pen understands it's a pen, it writes until it doesn't, and then it dies, right?
Yes.
Unfortunately, we throw these away,
Yeah.
But what we identify with because we're taught to is the grosser things, the body, the physical world, I'm a human from Earth. I am, when in all reality, we are way, way further than that. And that's, to me, that's truly what Ramana Maharshi said. Experience this for yourself, right? Have a direct experience of the I am.
Mhm.
For me, it goes past, I'm not even the I, right? I'm the in breath before the I am, right? So if you ever do the meditation,
Mhm.
I am, right? As you're breathing in, that's the awareness. Everything after that is still ego. Even the words I am, still ego. It gets very deep.
Yeah, there's that's very interesting. I'm wondering, yeah, because I think you presented a really clear, like, kind of non-dual, or like this understanding of being as being kind of central to our existence, and the only thing that doesn't seem to change. Um, and I'm wondering, but you then talk again about direct experience, and I think that that is, maybe it is just because of my background, or just, I don't know. I could blame it on the education I've had, or who knows who's to blame. But it's hard for
Right,
me
right.
to break out of, like, it's hard for me to really embrace this direct experience thing. And I really, yeah, I lean more on kind of a mental construct about non-duality or something, or a belief about it, and forget to just kind of experience the in breath, like you're saying, because it's like radically cool. Like how you presented it was very philosophical and very, you know, uh, um, not necessarily complex, but, you know, it takes some explaining to and describing. But then you kind of circle back and just said it's an in breath. It's also like very, very simple
Yep.
experience. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, is it as simple as that to directly experience this kind of teaching that you're transmitting right now, or how can
Uh,
we kind of establish?
oddly enough, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. The problem, and don't get me wrong, I'm saying this as somebody that still works on this as a problem,
Hmm.
um, is just allowing myself to experience it, right? So I have a direct experience that I am that in breath, right? But I would rather do this. I would rather do that. I would rather, I love doing kirtan, right?
Yeah.
And it can be a great avenue to experience that same consciousness, right? But at the same time, for my practices, right, I have a way of just sitting, right? And when I follow the breath enough, I get to that place. But as far as kirtan, right, I can sing about, Ram all day long, but it's still a concept. It's still a thing. You know what I mean? It's still a thing that exists in time. And
Hmm.
Ramana Maharshi was very spoken about, this does not exist in time. It's never been before or after. There's no time that it is, right. It's just in now, and a lot of times I think us as spiritual practitioners, we love to do our mala beads, we love to do our kirtan, we love, but for me, my question is always, when was the last time you just sat and breathed? Like, I'm not asking you to do meditation. I'm not asking you to sit in or lay in, savasana or whatever. When was just the last time you noticed your breath, sat and noticed your breath? That's it, you know. And just starting at a basic level, you're even going way back to a basic level, is something that can give you that direct experience, right? Because that will burn, that will be your, rascal.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, so this is like, thank you for that. This is a real, the direction that was coming up as you were speaking, is this other thing that's coming up for us. And it's, I don't know if it's at the level of a debate, Hanuman Das, but it's definitely a pretty somewhat vigorous discussion in, in our group. Am I coming through all right? I was getting some connection things from our lovely, shout out to the Zoom platform, our partner in making this podcast happen. I was having some connection issues for a second. Can you hear me okay,
Yeah,
Hanuman
I
Das?
think you're coming good. I can. Am I
Okay,
still hearable?
yeah, we're good. But anyways, I was saying that we're having this discussion come up again and again. I think you're exploring it. There's a bit of a tension almost in what you were saying about as spiritual practitioners. We love our mala beads, we love our kirtan. And there's this cohort of us that really love gradual practices, like a path, and a schema or like a framework. And there's some of us who have accepted this teaching that this is all that is. This is happening, and life is a practice. And of course, nothing is black and white. I'm sure there's some nuance here, and there's both sides are right to some extent. I personally, I'll just out myself as I'm a person who feels like I'm very attached to spiritual practice. I feel like I need spiritual practice. I love spiritual practice. I feel like it's my life preserver, and you couldn't pay me to stop doing spiritual practice. Maybe some amount. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. But anyways, what do you think about that whole thing? Like, we're having a lot of interesting discussions about spiritual practice maybe being a trap in some sense, and maybe this is all there is. And what are your thoughts on that? Because it sounds like you were talking.
Well, to be honest with you both, it is all a trap, right? And it's not, right? It's how are you subscribing to it? How are you allowing in your own personal dharma, right? In your way that your karma is playing out in your own personal life, right? How are you being attached to it, right? So if you notice, like for me, I'm supposed to do this, and this during the day, but I'm stuck, singing kirtan in my head all day. And that's still an attachment. So maybe I should look at challenging that. It's still a good thing, right? But if someone were to take it away from me, that aspect of knowledge of kirtan, right? Would I be the same person, or would I have an attachment? You know what I mean? So for me, that's where I challenge myself in my way of growing, is things that I notice that I'm having a hard time with. You know what I mean? Like obviously cigarettes. I will make that my challenge. I did a podcast one time on making your goal or making your challenge your guru, right? So if I really want to quit smoking, I'm going to be dedicated to doing the path of quitting and stepping down and this and that. I'm going to be dedicated to it, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to hold on to what happens. If I do, great. If I end up dying one day because I've smoked, well then, karma is going to get me around the next time because I didn't learn the lesson. When we say there's nothing else, there is nothing else. This is when you turn your screen off, right? My perspective of the world is all that exists.
Yeah.
Right now we're two beings seeing each other and talking, and we think we're separate, right? But I'm going to turn my screen off and do what I do, and my universe switches. You know what I mean? So my universe of Hanuman Das now goes from interacting with another being in their universe to other things. You know what I mean? The game continues. So for me, every moment that I'm in is the moment I'm in. And when the next one comes, then I'll be in that one too. But it doesn't really matter what that moment is. You know what I mean? Whether it exists, whether I'm a guy doing spiritual practices, whether I'm still a loving awareness that's witnessing all this stuff happen through this guy, John Newell's life.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That's very, very clear. I'm really seeing this tension in a way. It's not so much of a tension. Maybe it's a bit of a false debate. I think it circles back to this really interesting, I think, theme of our chat so far about intuition. Like right now, instead, I'm going to experiment with this. Instead of, necessarily I can be a bit rigid, to be honest. Like I'm practicing at 9 a.m. and I have to go for 33 minutes and 30 seconds because blah, blah, blah. Instead, just kind of intuitively, like now is I'm being chanting and it is right to be being chanting. And now it is right to face the self-hatred that is rising in me and meet it and say hello or whatever needs to kind of happen, and kind of letting the boundaries of life loosen a bit, and instead of thinking these experiences are practice and these experiences are, I don't know, the game or whatever. It's all
Oh yeah.
one game.
Yeah.
And I just, if I could indulge in this, when you said something very, very intriguing to me about making your challenge the practice. Is that right? I was wondering.
Your challenger guru is what the podcast was called, but yes, the same premise. You know what I mean? Like getting so deep into it and so intimate with it that is what you try to do, right? We do that with a lot of other desires, right? As people who have been through drug addiction, right? We did that, right? If we wanted it, we get it, right? So you got to chase it, your salvation or your grace, right? Like you wanted to chase other things. Just make it a positive. You know what I mean? If for people doing spiritual practices, sitting down in front of a kunji table and sitting and meditating for 22 minutes and 22 seconds works, do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But understand at a time when somebody calls and goes, hey, I need you to show up here right now. And it's, you're at 5 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Know that that's the guru going, are you a person doing spiritual practices, or did you get to experience spiritual practices for that amount of time?
Wow. That's such
You know
a
what I mean?
interesting example. It reminds me of like, yeah, the guru showing up as interrupting, quote unquote, interrupting spiritual practice. And the spiritual practice is to help this person or to be present with this person. Speaking of that, if folks, we talked a little bit about teachers, I want to celebrate one of my teachers on this question.
Yeah.
There is one of my teachers is Yungay Mingar Rinpoche, and has this. It's a Tibetan Buddhist meditation master, and he has panic attacks, or he had panic attacks as a child, and he talks about befriending.
Very severe.
Yeah, befriending his anxiety and panic attacks. That was when I read that book, if folks want to check it out, it's called The Joy of Living. That was very very radical to me, that, a lot of maybe folks watching this in some way identify as working with a mental health struggle. I just kind of assumed, Hanuman Das, that meditation, I think I wrongly assumed that meditation was an escape from my issues. And it's actually shown me that it is a way to get to know my issues in a deep, clear, very clear, visceral way. And kind of ironically or paradoxically, it's allowed me to accept them. Much of the suffering has dissolved. I'm still, of course, experience it. It hasn't been a miracle, but there's something very intriguing about that. So do you think that connects with your idea of
very much so. Like my personal practice, right? When I say, people sit down in front of a puji table and meditate for 20 minutes, that's my personal practice, right? I'll get off of work and I will, have a little thing set up, Hanuman's, right? And, I'll do my thing, my way of doing things. And that's another thing that Bhagavad Das taught, was you gotta get personal with it. You know what I mean? Whatever your practice is, if it is 3 minutes and 33 seconds, make it that up until the point where you're challenged on that. And then you look at it again. And it's really Ramdas describes it as labor pains. You're constantly, you're breathing in, you're breathing out. And then the next thing you know, you got something beautiful. right? You're so concerned about all this pain your body's in, and the fact that you're in labor, you're a person in labor. But that second that that baby comes out and you see it, right, you go, right? That moment, right, is where fire by suffering turns into grace. You know what I mean? And for me, on my personal path, by challenging some of my ego constructs, that's where that comes from. Is I say, well, maybe I just don't need this, you know. More times than not, for me personally, my spiritual things, like my meditation, my punji table, my flags, my pictures, they've all stayed, even after challenging them. You know what I mean? Because they were really a part of it. They weren't a subconstruct of an ego. You know what I mean? Like I would like say I'm, you know, a really big fan of Hanuman Das, or of there was a yogi named Hanuman Das in India, and he lived until he was like 113 or something like that. And but I've never met him, right? So can I say that he's a teacher of mine? Yes, on one level I can, but at the same time, no. You know, and that's where it is we all have to kind of understand where we're at on that path, on a personal level, and do the work there, you know.
Cool. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Hanuman Das, I'm also a fan of Hanuman Das, both Hanuman Das's. Speaking of that, you've been extremely generous with your time today. I'm really grateful for this chat. I was wondering if we could end on a final question. Is that all right?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. I was curious if you could share, if it feels right. It's been a wide-ranging and incredible conversation. We've touched a little bit about your personal background, and I'm grateful that you're willing to share that. I'm wondering if in our final question, you'd be willing to talk about on your journey, on your spiritual path and your spiritual biography, whoever you are, or whoever we are, if there are memorable moments, important teachings or insights that have really made an impact on you that are really present with you often, if you'd be willing to share that with us. Any kind of memorable teachings or memorable experiences, or does anything like that come alive for you as I ask it?
There is a couple. I have a lot, to be honest with you. When you do a lot of practice of being in the now of it, like you can really, like that pulled me back to a bunch. You know what I mean? So there's two though. One would be the moment that I mentioned when I heard that Ramdas had passed. You know, for me, that is almost as memorable as a trauma from when I was a kid. But at the same time, it's a good memory, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So it's one of those that's stuck in there of where I was at, what was going on, this and that. You know, I can almost pull myself back there. And then, to be honest with you, the other moment, which was two moments separately, was when my kids were born. I have two kids, and when I was there present, that's why I feel in so connected with Ramdas's teaching of labor, is because I was there for that. I saw it. Like, I wasn't physically, I don't want to negate anyone of femininity, but I wasn't the one in labor, but I was there. I saw the process of labor turns into bliss, and when he taught that made the moments of seeing my kids born so much more beautiful. Like it really put me in a space of, those are my attachments here. Like, if I have to leave this world still with attachments, those are my attachments, are the love and beauty for the two children that I saw born. Not necessarily my kids, right? But the two children that I saw born, and if that's where I leave this planet on this incarnation, I'm cool, But I'd like to do more. Don't know if that'll happen. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, doesn't.
Wow, thank you so much. It's so beautiful to hear about your experience both, and I'm just noticing as you're talking, it's one moment of death and another moment of birth.
Yeah.
That feels like really poignant to me, and a beautiful place to end. So I want to thank you again for being here. For what I do want to encourage folks who are with us to. We've talked a lot about healing today. Hanuman Das, it just seems to me that compassionate heart and healing presence, it's come through today. It's really touched me, and you're doing that, sharing that with the world with Hanuman's healing hour. Is there anywhere else that we could find you, or anything else you want to talk about?
I have social medias. A lot of the major ones like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. All of them are Hanuman Das in a form. Like TikTok is the only weird one because I couldn't, for whatever reason, get Hanuman Das, whatever, I don't know. So that's Hanuman Das 01.
Okay.
But so other than that, but yeah. And then, you know, I do have like personal email and things like that for anyone that is wanting maybe more private type talking and teaching and things like that.
Okay.
You know, I am a father and a parent and a being too, so I try to get back to as much as possible, but at the same time, you know, every once in a while.
Yeah, of course. And maybe if folks want to connect with you, they can learn more about that. We will, of course, make it easy for folks to find you. And yeah, thank you for spending your time with us and dedicating your life to healing and these ideas. Thanks, Hanuman Das. Thanks, everyone. Bye.